Okay, so GamerDom asked me a question. Hey, do you know how to make it like a riddle on it? For instance, if you find part one, part two is now visible, and part one is destroyed by any chance. Okay, that's a cool question. Little confusing in the way it's asked, but let's go through it. So basically, you want to find part one, so collect a part, and then the next part is visible and you can collect it. I'm guessing that's kind of what you mean. So, like, I don't know, imagine you got to collect fruit in the correct order. Um, so I've chucked something together. I've got a few little solutions here. We'll start with. Oh, let's make sure these are all the correct ones turned on. Actually, I probably can just have this like this. Um, right, let's make this one enabled and this one enabled. Right, there we go. Now I've got it the right way around. Okay, so this first one, we're going to do, these ones are red. I've got this first part is visible. Second part, obviously you'd have it invisible, but I've got it visible just so you know where it is at the moment, just a little bit. And I've got this script here. So we're just basically going to reference the model that these parts are in as an easy way to find part one and part two. Making sure I use wait for child to get it, because in case it's not loaded into the game before the script runs. And then we're going to use the touch event of part one. So when part one is touched, we're connecting this function, and it's handing it the other part. So this is the part that's touched it. Don't actually need that in this one because we're not using it. I'm just going to keep it really simple. So we could actually not even have that in there for this script. Okay, and then when we touch part one's transparency, we'll go to 1, which is invisible, and part two's transparency will go to 0, so it's completely visible. And if I just show you what that's like, so that's the red one. If we walk over to this, there we go, um, and that's as simple as that. Part one was visible, walk into it, and part two becomes visible, and part one becomes invisible. Let's look at the second script. Okay, now in this one, we're going to do the same thing, get the model, and then reference the parts, and then we've got part one's touched event, and again we're still not even using these. We When you touch part one, that becomes transparent. Part two becomes invisible. No, sorry, part one becomes invisible and part two becomes visible. And then if part two gets touched, part one becomes visible and part two becomes invisible. So it will continuously flip flop back between the two. There we go. Boom. And as you can see, it doesn't matter if we run into this one again. There we go. Okay. And now here's a more interesting solution that's more expandable. We can add more and more. This one gets a bit more complicated, but this is a much better system. There are better ones than this even, but yeah, what I've put together so far. Okay, so this time we get in the model, and then we're going to use get children. So we're going on the model, we're going to make another variable called model children. This is actually going to be a table. So model children equals model get children. So that will get us all the children in this here. So it'll be the script and these parts. So we're then going to loop through these with a for loop, and then we don't need this first variable, so we just give it an underscore because we're not using it. Child, so for each child of the thing, in pairs, model children. And we're going to go, so we're going to loop through every single one of them. It doesn't matter which order, which is why it's pairs. And then so we say if the child is a part. Now, say they were mesh parts or unions or something like that, we could add more to that. So we could say or child is a mesh part. Then, and we could then say or child is a union operation or whatever it was that we want to look through for. And then we're going to say local order child get attribute order. Now what I've done here is in these parts I have added an attribute and set it to be the order in which they're shown. So this one is 1, this one is 2, and this one is 3. And then what I do is I build this table, parts table, by adding the child if it's a part to this table, and I give it the position of the order. So number 1 will be the first one in the table. Number 2 will be the second one. Number 3 will be the third. And as many as we could add hundreds, and it will still go through all of them in order, and it'll make this table the correct order. And then once I've done that, once I've constructed this table, we then cycle through this table. We say, for again underscore and parts, because this is the parts table, in I pairs, because we want to go through it in numerical order now. That's what I pairs does, and I thought that should have been in capital. Very strange. Yeah, no, my mistake. It's not capital. And then I've obviously got, I don't need that print statement. We're going to set the part that it is transparency to 0, and then we're going to wait until that part. So it's going to get the first part, and it's going to make it visible, and then it's going to wait until that part is touched, and then it's going to make this part's transparency 0.9. We could make it 1, so if we make it 1, they'll be invisible, and then it will basically loop back through to the next part and set the next part's visibility to 0, and wait until that's touched to turn that one invisible. So let's show you how that works there. So these ones are all invisible in Studio, and then they become visible when the scripts run. Number 1 will become visible first, and then number 2 will become visible, and number 3, and that will just go through that sequence until it's done. We could add, say these were collectibles and you wanted them to have coins, we could easily add another attribute. I don't know, let's say number, and we're going to name it worth, and it's how much it's worth. And we could say that this one is worth 3, and this one is worth, let's add another attribute, and say, we could do this with script a lot easier, but let's just do this like this, worth, and let's make this one worth 5, let's say, and this one, let's add another attribute, number, and let's say worth, and set this one to worth 10. Now let's add a simple leaderboard. Why won't that go away? What's going on with my volume, eh? It's a bit annoying. Sorry about that. I do not know what's going on with my volume controls there. Let's just drop down a little bit. Okay. Players. We want player service. Players. Local. Let's assign it to this. Players equals game get service players, and we want to players dot player added. When a player's added, then we're going to connect function, and what we want in there is the player, and we're going to add a folder called leader stats. Yep, that's what we want. Leader stats equals instance.new folder leader stats.name. We're going to set that to leader stats. This is just making a basic leader stats using the inbuilt stuff, and we're going to set its parent to the player, and then we're going to add a value in there. Let's just add a let's call it cash. Let's see, we're adding a cash one, yeah. Okay, instance.new, and we'll add a number value. Could be an value, whichever you like, depends on what you're doing with it. Cash.value, let's set it to 0 just to start with, and cash.parent is going to be the leader stats folder. So you see there, we're basically making a folder called leader stats in the player and making a variable inside that called cash and setting it to 0. And then let's go back to this script. Now this is what we want to do. We want to add, when this is touched, we want to add the parts thing there. So we're going to say Now here's where we really do want to get the touch connection. So instead of just waiting, we're going to actually connect here. Connect function, and we're going to have the other part in here. And then in here, we're going to add, we're going to look at whether it's a player or not. So we'll say if other part dot parent find first child, and we're looking for a humanoid. And then if it's got a humanoid, we're going to get the character from that, the player from that. So we're going to do players. I haven't got the players in this one. Let's just add the player service to it. We call players equals game get service players. And now we want to do get player from character, and then in the brackets we're going to put the character, which would be the other part dot parent, like that. And then we should be assigning this to something, so we're going to say local player equals players get player from character other players dot parent. You see how that's going together now? And then we're going to say if the player exists, because you might have NPCs or something that are triggering this, and you don't want them to actually be doing it. So we're going to say if player, then, and now we want to add the value of the part and to the player's cache. So let's say player. No, wait. We're going to look in the part. That's right. No, we're going to look for the parts. Yeah, so we want the player dot leaderstats dot cache. That's what we called it. I didn't name it. Hilarious. That's not going to work unless we name this. Cache dot name equals cache. Yeah, very important we name it. Otherwise, yeah, it'll just be called value, and that could get very confusing. And I did it with a capital because I'm like that. Okay, so we're going to make the cache equal to itself plus the amount. So instead of saying, we could just say equals this again plus whatever. But instead of doing that, we can actually just very simply write plus equals, and it's going to be plus equals an amount. Let's just put it in a variable first. It's easier. We can say let's call it worth, and it's going to equal the part get attribute. And in here, we're going to put worth, because that was what we called the attribute. And then, look, we're just going to get it. That's it. We're not setting it, we're getting it. And put worth into here. So it's going to be plus. Helps if you can spell. There we go. So that should now give us a leader stats and adds the points to it. Okay, so we've got leader stats with cache in it. And I've failed because, and you know what I've done? Classic mistake here. Cache should be cache dot value, like this, because this is a value instance, not just a variable. Nope, still not working. What have I failed on? Script 3. So if it's got a player, we're adding this to it, but it's not firing this bit. Why is it not firing this bit? So here's what we do to check this. We're going to say print, and we're going to just say, I don't know, loop accessed. Oh, it's firing through very quickly. Why is it doing that then? Because I'm not saying wait for it to be touched. So I should still be able to do it like this. Uh, oh, right, here's what we need. This is the bit that I just messed up. There we go. Sorry to make things more confusing. I have a feeling that should do it. There we go. Loop access just on the first one. Bam, there we go. And then that's it. And so what I done wrong there, just to go through that, was I got rid of the waiting for the thing to be touched. So now we connect the touch event and then we wait for it to be touched before continuing on in this loop. And let's just have a look. We could add some more parts to this. Let's duplicate that and make it called part 4 and move it along a bit. I mean, it could be anywhere. It can be over there. And then, so this is the idea. These could be all hidden around, I guess. Let's press play. It should be as simple as that. Dum, dum. Oh, the thing is, though, is I actually just left them both order number 3, which is what's confused that. Part 4 needs to be in the 4th order. I'm going to leave all these mistakes in because a good way of should help with working through your problems. There we go. And so we can just put as many parts in there as long as we give them all the correct numbers that we want them to be in. Now I've just run into another issue there that we need to work on. It doesn't matter if I run through these, they're going to keep adding me cash, which is not what we want. We want it to only add the cash once. Okay, so let's make this a little bit more complicated and add in there a connection and a disconnection. So let's connect the part here. We're going to say, we're going to assign it to a variable this time. What if we make a connection? Let's make it a separate. There we go. Local. Let's call it touch connection. And here we're going to say touch connection equals, and then we're basically connecting this connection to it. And then after it's been touched, then we're going to disconnect it. Oh, actually, we can just disconnect it. We'll tell you what we'll do is we'll disconnect it in it, because that way it's going to actually wait for being fired. No, what we're doing. Touch connection, disconnect. That should give us the yeah, that looks good. And then you get 15, and we're not getting them over and over again. Now, this might not be the most efficient method in terms of the coding, but it's a solution to your problem. What else can we look at adding to this? Now, technically, this is just waiting to be touched by anything. Could do with it waiting just to be touched by another part. I'll have to look into that. There must be a way to do that, but it's not coming to me. Hopefully this will help you out, and at least get you going along the way to figure out what it is you want to do. Obviously, if you've got more questions, do ask below, and yeah, if it does help you, let me know that as well. I'd love to know if it does help you out. and where I can improve. Thanks. Speak to you all soon.